Hello everyone, it's me Uncle John. Today I am going to read S66101, The Midwife's Apprentice, Chapter 9, The Bailiff's Wife's Baby. A good nut year means a good baby year, the midwife said as she sent Alice and her nutting basket to the woods to see what kind of a year it would be. All day, Alice shook the young trees, climbed into the old ones, and gathered the hard-shelled bounty that fell. Hazelnut, walnut, chestnut, almonds, mounded in her basket, stirred hunger with thoughts of her roasted nuts. On cold winter night, that was the limit of her imagining. Never had she heard of almond cream, pickled walnuts, or eels in chestnut sauce, such as they ate at the manor or the homes of rich merchants in London and New York. Coming back from the woods, she saw the boys teasing the cat. She took a handful of nuts, the biggest and hardest and heaviest in her basket, and heaved them at the boys. "Touch that cat again," she shouted, "and I will unstop this bottle of rat's blood and viper's flesh, and summon the devil, who will change you into woman. And henceforth each of you will give like a woman, and wear dresses like a woman, and give birth like a woman." She was too startled by her outburst to be afraid. The boys were too startled by her outburst to move. So Burr the cat escaped and Alice reached the midwife's cottage unharmed. Until they were quite old, the boys in the dark of night sometimes were afraid that the midwife's bottle actually had the power to make them into women. It was fortunate that the boys never tested Alice's magic, for the bottle she shook so fiercely at them was not but blackberry cordial she was to deliver to old Anna on her way home from nutting in the woods. And although it would have made the boys purple and sticky, no harm would have befallen them. Never would they have been able to give birth like a woman. That night, John, the bailiff's wife, sent for the midwife. Alice lighted Jen's way through the gloomy night with a rushlight that hissed and sputtered in the mist. The midwife chased Joanne's husband, a young son, 2 pigs, and a pigeon out of the cottage. It bade Alice wait for her in the yard and slammed the cottage door. Alice dozed there in the wet through the long hours of the night. Shortly after dawn, when the sky turned not rosy and welcoming as it does in summer, but merely a lighter shade of gray, the midwife kicked her awake. Up, Beetle, and to the cottage for cowslip, mugwort, and pepper. By the 14 holy helpers, Joan will have to sneeze this baby out. When Alice returned, the midwife was waiting in the yard, her bottles and herbs and linen neatly packed in the basket beside her. "Has Joan then sneezed the baby out already?" Alice asked. "Huh. This child looks never to come out. You go in and wipe Joan's face, and I will be back as soon as I can. Lady Agnes at the manor has started her labor, and wishes me to attend her. They will pay me in silver, and the bailiff in chickens and beans. God and the baby is willing, I will have it all." Alice began to cry. "I do not know what to do, Mistress Jane. Do not leave me. Do not leave her. I do not know what to do." Alice was silenced with a sharp slap. "Do nothing, you lack-wit fool. She will never deliver the baby. It'll die unborn, and I will take it dead from her when I return. Let her labor while I see to the Lady Agnes. I will come back, do what must be done, and collect both fees." Alice snuffed into her sleeves, leaving her nose dirty and red and no drier than it was. "Do nothing," repeated the midwife. "In her state, Joan will not even remember that I felt. Do nothing and say nothing," and off the midwife ran. Up to the manor where warm fires blazed, and the laboring mother was soothed with wine and syrups and kind words. Alice turned back to the dark, cold, nearly empty cottage, took a deep breath, and went in. She couldn't see the figure on the bed at first for all the smoke, and then realized that the writhing mound was Joanne, the bailiff's proud wife, who washed us a linen each week and never let herself be seen without shoes even in summer. And there she was, a moaning, mewling mound on a straw bed. Alice covered her mouth and her eyes and turned to go. She could tell the midwife she had waited with Joanne, who was to know if she sat on the stoop, until she heard the crinkle of the midwife's starched wimple. Let me die. By the bones of Saint Mildred, let me die, or help me to die. The moaning, mewling mound spoke, not as Alice expected, frantically or madly, but calmly and reasonably asking for death. To Alice it sounded all the more frightening and strange, as if a goose had spoken, or an egg, or the dung heap in the yard. Beetle, is that you? Joan asked. Where is the midwife? Out but to relieve herself, mistress. She will be back soon, and then your baby will be born. Don't shame me, Beetle. I know this baby is stuck and will never be born, and we will both die soon, and why not now? Surely midwife has something in a basket to help us along. Shh, mistress. 'Tis but pain and fright make you speak so, for else you'd never think of sending yourself to hell, and the baby with you. Hell indeed, Beetle. And no worse than this suffering. Suddenly the proud, reasonable Joan became again the moaning, mewling mound. Then as the hot pains invaded her body, she shouted and thrashed and flailed and shrieking and kicking. Alice betook herself to the cottage door, ready to run from this horror. But the memory of the proud, frightened Joan of a moment ago kept her inside, and she asked herself, what would the midwife do? Was she here? What had Alice seen her do from cottage windows all this year, when the baby wouldn't come and the mother would look to scream and thrash herself to death? What had Will done in that gravel pit to help Tansy with the calves who would not be born? Alice took another deep breath and returned to Joan's side. She gave her mugwort and warm ale to drink and spoke soothingly, calling her sweetheart and good old girl. She warmed the oil over the fire and rubbed her head and belly as she had the cow. She did not know the spell or the magic, so gave Joan all she had of care and courtesy and hard work. So it was that in the middle of the night, when the monks were rising from their beds for midnight prayer, and in the towns revelers were returning home full of beef and wine, and at the manor the midwife was delivering Lady Agnes of her first son. So it was that a calmer, more rested Joan, with the kind attention of the midwife's apprentice, but for her daughter, fit fast, but perfectly formed, whom she called Alice Little. Alice had washed Alice Little, and wrapped her in clean linen, and laid her in her father's arms before Jane, the midwife, that bustled up the path and into the cottage. Jane made some remarks, which no one believed, about having left for just an instant and stuck her hand out for her fee. The bailiff said, we have no need of you, Jane. Your helper has taken care of us with her too strong hand and her good common sense. Ah, that Alice felt so much pride and satisfaction that she had to let him somehow, and so she smiled, which felt so good that she thought she might do it again. Facing the midwife's jealous anger, she went back to the cottage, ate some cold soup and hard bread, lay down on her straw bed by the fire, and had a dream about her mother, which upon waking she could not remember. Chapter 10. The Boy. After this, when the midwife was summoned to attend her mother, Alice took to stealing her way inside the woman's cottage, hiding in the shadows so as not to be noticed, watching closely to see what the midwife did, and how and why. She took and stored in her brain and her heart what she heard the midwife say and do about babies and birthing and easing pain. She discovered that an eggshell full of the juice of leeks and mallows will make her labor quicker, that rubbing the mother's belly with the blood of a crane can make it easier, the birthwort roots and flowers can strengthen contractions in a reluctant mother, and that if all else fail, the midwife can shout into the birth passage, "Infant, come forward. Christ calls you to the light." She found that mouth ear. Willow can help stop bleeding, that a tea of anise and dill and bitter milk work will help when milk will not come. She learned the newborn infants are readily seized by fairies unless salt is put in their mouth, in their cradles, that a baby born in the morning will never see ghosts, and that a son born after the death of his father will be able to cure fever. Alice thought the midwife had more skills with herbs and syrups and spells than Will Bassett, but Will delivered baby just as well and was much kinder to the mother. Alice thought if she needed a midwife, she'd rather someone like Will than Jane Sharp. For all her spells and syrups, only one cold November day before the pale, watery sun could light up the morning sky, Alice left the midwife's cottage and hurried to the cowshed to see Tansy's twin, now called the Baldred and the Bilfris, after the saintly local hermits. Give them some the parsnips tops to munch. They huddled as close to Tansy as the calves. Lay a sleeping boy, blue in his lips, frost in his hair. Tears frozen on his diddy cheeks. Her coming startled him awake, and he jumped to his feet. "I'll be leaving, mistress," he said. I heard nothing. I'll be going." Alice grabbed his arm. "Wait, boy. I mean you. No harm. Who are you?" "I'll be nobody, mistress. I go. Everybody is somebody, and so are you. Want some breakfast?" From the sleeve of her gown, Alice pulled the parsnip tops, bent for the cows, some cheese, as safe for the cat, and fed instead the hungry boy. She watched him as he ate. 6 he was, maybe a little older, but all he was so small and thin. He looked a little like her, now she thought about it. Sudden pleasure inside her warmed her hand as she reached out to smooth the boy's hair. "Next time you'll be much warmer, nestled in the dung heap these cold days," she told him. "I know." He finished the cheese and looked up at her. Bread, I'll go fetch some. You stay here." Alice ran for the cottage, found a bit of bread she had hidden away for the cat, ignored the midwife's questions and demands, and started back for the cowshed. The boy was running down the road toward her, pursued by several much bigger boys, shouting and threatening with their pitchforks and rakes. "Beggar, thief, ragtag," they shouted as the boy crashed right into Alice, sent them both sprawling to the ground. "Have off, Dick," said Alice. "I'll be telling your granny who drank that ale she had for herself, and you, Jack Snaggletooth. I still have the bottle of red blood." As the boys backed away, Alice stood, brushing the blood from her skirt with one hand and holding on to the boy with the other. "Have off, I said." Moving toward them, "Corpse bones, beetle, you're but wagging him, since you are no sport no more." And the boys moved off to torment someone else until they were found, slapped, and sent to work. Alice and the boy, who said his name was Runt, got back to the midwife's cottage. Jane was out singing to Kate, the weaver's daughter, who was having trouble with her milk. Alice brought the boy into the yard, cleaned his face with a skirt, combed the straw from his hair, all the while telling me that Runt might be a good name for a small pig, but never for such a likely-looking boy as he. They should help him find a place to sleep, something regular to eat, but he would have to have a real name, for she was not taking anyone named Runt. "What is your name?" the boy asked. "Alice." "Then I'll be Alice too." "No, you cannot be Alice, for it is a name for a girl." "What then is the king's name?" Alice did not know, so she hid the boy in the chicken house and went about the village, asking folks what was the king's name. Longshanks? Hammer? The devil himself was a Scot, and so had a reason to feel that way. "Just the king is all." "Edward," said the bailiff. "The king's name is Edward." "Edward," said Alice to the boy. "Then Edward is my name," said Edward, who used to be called Runt. Alice nodded. She could see the midwife coming in the distance, so Alice spat on her finger and rubbed a bit of stubborn dirt up Edward's cheek. "Go. up that road to the manor, they hiring boys to help with the threshing. Tell them Jane, the midwife, sent you, and bid them remember the good job she did delivering Lady Agnes' stubborn son. Now go. Edward shook his head and grabbed a piece of her skirt in his fist. He put him off. So he straightened his tunic and went, looking back once to throw a brave, shaky grin at Alice. The returning midwife, angry at Alice for ignoring her earlier, sent her to do all the least pleasant chores, roasting frogs, livers, boiling snails into jelly, stripping the thorns from dockberry roses. But Alice minded little, for she thought not of her task, but of Edward's face, and the abundance of bread and cheese up at the manor, looking for the hungry boy's belly to fill. Chapter 11, The Living. Alice was sitting by the fire one cool November morning, tying up birch twigs for a broom, when a pounding came at the door. Jane opened the door to Matthew Blunt, whose mother was about to have another baby and wanted Alice to come and help. By the bones of St. Polycarp, who is Alice? To bellow the midwife. The boy jerked his head towards Alice. Her, your apprentice. My mom said Alice helped her sister Joanne, the bailiff's wife, when no one else could, and so she will have no one but Alice. Her? The dung beetle? The midwife quivered in disbelief. You're asking for her, who knows nothing and fears to try and does only when what little I bid her, and that none too well? She cracked Alice on the cheek. My mom will have no other, repeated the boy. The midwife looked a bit like a mad dog as she spat and spluttered and tried to get words out past all the anger in her mouth. Go then, Alice. Such treachery, such a thievery, eating my bread and stealing my mother's? Go. When she began to throw cooking pots their way, Alice and the boy lit out and ran all the way to Adam Blunt's cottage. Alice stood outside for a minute, surprised at having been asked for, and not knowing whether to be pleased until the boy nudged and pushed her to the door. She wiped the hair from her eyes, licked the lips, and went in. The cottage was warm and Emma Blunt even warmer. What with her efforts to have this baby and be done with it, Alice rubbed and crooned and fussed. As she had with the bailiff's wife, she fed Emma on raspberry leaf tea and comfrey wine. She built up the fire, closed all the windows, and 3 times called the baby forth. Then she sent Matthew to search for birthworth root, put out the fire, and opened all the windows, but the baby wouldn't come, as if he were holding tight to his mother. Reluctant to be separate and alone, Alice, although able to ease a willing baby into the world, no idea how to encourage a reluctant one. So, as the day passed from morning to midday, Emma tossed on her tumbled linen, and still there was no sign of a bailiff. Doubtful and uncertain without the midwife, or at least rushed to her tell her what to do, and unwilling to get herself or Emma into trouble, stood back, said, I cannot do it. She washed Emma's face, smoothed her wet hair, took a deep breath, and sent Matthew back to the cottage for the midwife. Emma and the unborn baby rested from the morning struggle, so all was quiet until the midwife roared in like the wind before rain, blessing everyone out of her way as she set about attending to mother and babe. She insulted and encouraged and pushed and poked, brewed and stewed and remedied, anointing her hands with cornmeal and oil. She rubbed and knitted, pulled and tugged, and turned the baby from both the inside and outside until finally he was in a position to come out. Then she slapped Emma's great bulge of a belly, lifted her from behind by her shoulder, and gave her a good shake. All was chaos, noise, and heat and blood, until finally over the tumult, Alice could hear the cries of a baby, the moans of a tired mother, and the laughter of the triumphant midwife. Alice backed out of the cottage, then turned and ran up the path to the road. She didn't know why or where. Behind her in the cottage was disappointment and failure. The midwife had used no magic. She had delivered the baby with work and skill, not magic spell, and Alice should have been able to do it, but could not. She had failed. Strange sensation tickled her throat, but she did not cry, for she did not know how, and a heavy weight sat in her chest, but she did not moan or wail, for she had never learned to give voice to what was inside her. She knew only to run away. So it was that on a crisp, sunny the Martinmas afternoon, while the villagers slaughtered their cattle and pigs for winter meat, while Maggie Miller stirred the sheep's blood pudding for supper, while Will Russell and Dick gathered beech and oak and ash chestnut for winter fires, while Elnos and Saxon cleaned the manor, privies and cursed God for making him a peasant and not a lord, while the boy Edward ate a bowl of herring soup and thought of the warm corner of the manor kitchen that was to be his, while Emma, the bailiff's wife's sister, kissed the new son on his tiny red nose and fell asleep with him at her breast. While the life of the village went on, Alice turned back on all that she knew that had come too dear to her and headed up the road from the village to she knew not where, and the cat went with her. The, the end.